Hey guys, I'm Jordy, and this is your guide to the reanimated queen of the blue dragonflight, the #1 frostworm in all of our hearts, Sindragosa.
Suffer, mortals, as your pathetic magic betrays you!
Now, Sindragosa is in the top 3 most difficult fights in ICC. She's got a pretty slow first and second phase that rotates back and forth until you hit 35%, where you hit a frantic, crazy phase 3 that will take you a lot of attempts to learn. If you listen to this guide and not make the same mistakes that we did, you should be able to cut out a lot of wipes and save a lot of time from your progression. Okay, as far as raid comp goes, you want to flex up to 7 healers. Yes, you heard me. For your prog, use 7 or even 8 healers. I'll explain why, but believe me, it will help. This fight is not a DPS race. You've got nothing to pump down to skip mechanics. You're just slow and steady, and extra healers will save you from wiping in phase 3. I swear.
Do it! Just do it!
Do it. Like with Dreamwalker, we have our hybrids spec their various healing specs. Don't worry about missing buffs or debuffs, it just doesn't matter. The healer is king. I'll explain why shortly. For tanking, you want 2 strong tanks decked out in some semblance of frost resist gear. You're shooting for between 350 and 500 fully buffed, and expertise capped because Sindragosa does parry haste. Items like Titanium Frostguard Ring, the ring from Onyxia, any piece of Icebane, stuff like that. Enchants also go a long way. There's the Helmet Enchant, Leatherworking Bracer Enchant, or the Cloak Enchant, whatever. Mix and match. I'm not going to micro it for you. Good luck. Speaking of parry hasting, there are times where people may accidentally hit from the front. To prevent this, I've linked a weak aura down below that will alert in raid chat if you get parried. Just don't do it. Okay, so Sindragosa has a bunch of abilities. We're going to combine the walkthrough and the ability section for this fight because each phase is handled pretty differently. First, she's got a ticking, persistent, non-stop frost damage aura called Frost Aura that does 6,000 frost damage every 3 seconds. This lasts anytime she's on the ground, but you will outrange it when she takes off for phase 2. Next, and critically important, Unchained Magic and Instability. Okay, so this is going to be one of the most infuriatingly annoying mechanics that you'll be facing this entire raid. Unchained Magic is a debuff that's applied to what is supposed to be 3 healers and 3 casters every 30 seconds or so. However, sometimes it can screw up and do 4 healers or even 5. I don't know why, it just happens sometimes. The fight is weird, don't yell at me. Okay, so about 10 seconds in, she'll cast Unchained Magic. This puts a 30-second debuff on those 6 people. Now, anytime they complete a cast, they get a stack of instability. This is a 5-second debuff that once it expires will cause an explosion to go out on the wearer and anyone within 20 yards, dealing 2,000 arcane damage per stack. Alright, so you get the debuff, a cast goes off because you didn't see it, and you've got a stack. You need to run out of the raid right away from everyone else as fast as you can and let that stack fall off. If you keep casting, you can prolong the instability, gaining another stack and another stack, refreshing the duration, but now doing 4,000 damage or so to anyone nearby. This can go up for the entire duration of Unchained Magic. There are some strategies where you can bubble or ice block or dispersion off that damage that would be done to you, but the explosion will still go out and you will do big damage to anyone around you. So if you choose to let your stacks build to keep casting for whatever reason, make sure you are outside of the raid and anyone else nearby. Okay, so that's Unchained Magic. We'll talk about how exactly to deal with this, but it's annoying. For melee, they get hit with Chilled to the Bone anytime that they attack Sindragosa with physical damage. This does 1,000 frost damage every 2 seconds and stacks, so melee need to be careful and watch their stacks as they build, letting it reset every so often or they will die. We don't let people going over 6 to 8 stacks and even fewer in the last phase, so just watch it and be careful. Finally, there's Blistering Cold. About once a minute while she's on the ground, she'll cast this, sucking everyone in toward her and then starting her Blistering Cold AoE spell that will kill anyone standing too close. This is super simple to avoid, just run away from her once she's yoinked you in. Once the AoE goes out, go back to DPSing as normal. Alright, additionally, she's got normal dragon stuff. She's got a cleave, so don't stand too close in front of her, a tail whip that is super avoidable, don't stand behind her, and a frost breath that is particularly nasty that deals around 60k damage and can apply a debuff that reduces attack speed and movement. In phase 1, this isn't that big a deal, but in phase 3, when we get there, it will be. Okay, that's all of the phase 1 stuff. Let's see how we handle it. For your first pull of the lockout, when you kill the final Frostworm in the room, she'll land, but generally she pulls as you head into the middle of the room. Once she lands, your tank should pick her up, immediately turning her broadside to the stairs. Now I'm going to recommend you fight her on this side for this guide. It's a bit more space than the balcony on the far side. The far side does provide you with the ability to DPS her some during the air phase, but it's not necessary for progression, I promise. Okay, so she lands in the middle of the room, your main tank should turn her broadside and DPS begins. The stack should be kind of clumped because 10 seconds in, she'll send out that first wave of Unchained Magics. Your afflicted healers and casters should move out of the stack, your healers toward the side that the main tank is on, and the DPS toward the side that her tail is. This gives your healers the ability to heal the main tank if necessary, but also lets them move away from the stack. I'd recommend for prog at least to stress to your casters to stop casting during this debuff. I'm sorry, your parse just doesn't matter. Any added damage to the raid is just going to make it more difficult, and there's no real danger of enrage, so don't worry about it. So those 6 people get out, fanning out as best they can so any accidental casts don't splash amongst each other and the raid continues. Blistering Cold will happen, just run out, no big deal. Another round of Unchained Magic, deal with it by having those people spread out appropriately and melee watch your stacks, don't let them get too high. Okay, so about 45 seconds into that first phase, she'll get frustrated and take off, starting phase 2. As she's doing that, she'll mark 6 people with a debuff called Frost Beacon. This looks like a hunter's mark over their head. These 6 people, after 7 seconds, will all get hit with a big block of ice from Sindragosa and get stunned with Ice Tomb. This is very similar to Saffron, a big block of ice with your friends trapped inside. What's different than Saffron, however, is how you use these to LOS. She'll cast 4 separate instances of Frost Bomb at a telegraphed point on the ground. These should be easily visible. Your goal is to use the Ice Tombs to LOS behind, opposite of where the Frost Bomb is landing, and avoid the damage. Complicating this a bit further is that your friends won't simply pop out of these Ice Tombs after the 4th bomb lands. You'll need to break them out by DPSing them. Each tomb has 450k HP, and shortly after the last Frost Bomb lands, anyone still trapped in them will start taking damage from asphyxiation, dealing 8% of their HP per second until they are freed where they can breathe again. Alright, so here's how we handle it. Foji has a weak aura that should telegraph the 6 people that are hit with Frost Beacon, and those people will stack in pairs at the bottom of the stairs, about 10 yards apart. It's important to not be too close to these people, as you're in range when the tomb lands, you too will get frozen. The whole raid will move up the stairs, and the people at the bottom of the stairs stack accordingly. We ended up using 3 stacks of 2. This made it easiest to cleave them and maximize the LOS to make it easy to avoid the bombs. So, the people line up per the weak aura, and boom, the tombs land. From here, everyone moves back down the stairs, and we split the raid into 3. Each group whittling down the tombs, and as they do, keeping a very close eye on the main stage of the fight, watching for where the Frost Bomb lands, and strafing left and right to make sure the tombs are between them and where it goes. Right as that 4th bomb lands, we call for all hands sapper, and everyone blasts the remaining HP of the tombs, ideally popping them super fast in unison, freeing those that were trapped inside. It's critical that you don't pop any of these tombs too early. They're very important to use for LOS. Okay, so the raid has survived the 4th bomb, the tombs are popped, and Sindragosa lands again. Phase 1 now repeats. Same thing. Nothing changes. You'll do about 20% of her HP early in the phase per ground phase, meaning she'll take off about 3 times before getting her to 35% and beginning phase 3. Alright, phase 3 is where things get very tricky. Sindragosa will now be planted on the ground for the remainder of the fight, combining some of her phase 1 and 2 abilities and introducing an especially nasty one. First, every 6 seconds, she'll pulse in a room-wide AoE, a debuff called Mystic Buffet. If you're in LOS of her, this will apply a debuff for 8 seconds that will increase your magical damage taken by 20% per stack. This includes damage from Unchained Magic, Frost Aura, Chilled to the Bone, pretty much everything except her melee attack. Additionally, about every 15 seconds, she'll target someone with Frost Beacon and eventually tomb them like she does in phase 2. This person needs to run out of the raid and set up in a specific position, enabling the raid to use them as LOS to avoid stacking further Mystic Buffets. Anything over 2 or 3 stacks will really begin to hurt on whoever is hit by it, so you want to dip out of LOS early and often to avoid getting too many stacks and helping your healers out. Furthermore, your tank won't have access to that LOS very easily, and those debuffs will really begin to ramp fast, so they'll need to tank swap every so often to enable each other to reset their debuffs. Cooldowns are critical here as their stacks ramp because her Frost Breath will be doing double or triple damage depending on stack quantity. Okay, so how do we handle all of this? As she approaches 35%, we tell our melee to reset their stacks and have everyone prepared to pump hard. Once the first Mystic Buffet goes out, we lust and begin to blast. That first person gets marked with Frost Beacon and moves to the left, dropping the Ice Tomb just outside of melee range. The raid shifts left. Healers can reset their stacks right away, while casters and melee need to weigh doing damage and moving to the tomb. One thing to note, if you LOS a single application of the debuff, your entire stack should reset. So feel free to dip in, let the debuff go out, and then dip out and keep pumping. You'll need to begin DPS on the tomb, keep the tank up, and keep damage high on the boss. Now, another Frost Beacon goes out, and that person moves to everyone's right, far enough away not to splash the raid with the tomb. You finish off the one that you're on, and the raid shifts again, moving behind this one. Now repeat the same thing back and forth, balancing your stacks, your DPS, keep the tanks up, and shifting back and forth with the tombs as LOS. This is easier said than done. Unchained Magic is still going out, so there's lots of RNG on who gets picked. Tank heals are particularly scary here, so using big cooldowns as often as possible is helpful, and raid healing can be very difficult, so DPS are strongly encouraged to pop defensives and respect their stacks. Contrary to a normal final phase, this isn't a DPS race, at least not without more gear, so do your best to keep yourself up. Healthstones, AMS, IBF, shield walls, bubbles, anything to help the healers out. Also, if you get Unchained Magic in this phase, just don't cast. I promise you, it is almost never worth it. The raid has stacks that increase the damage of the explosion, and the addition of your heals or DPS are not going to make or break the fight 99% of the time. Just stop casting, respect it, and sit tight. LOS behind the blocks and wait for it to fall off. You've also got to watch out for Blistering Cold. The Ice Tombs are not LOSable for it, so make sure you run far away. If you've picked up the cadence of phase 3, survived the Ice Tombs, the ticking Frost Auras, the tanks were able to swap, and your DPS respects their stacks, you should be able to outlast her here, and she'll go down. Congratulations. Okay, let's talk about some tank tips. Like I mentioned early on, make sure you've got between 350 and 500 frost resist and aim for like 14% expertise to prevent parry hasting. The melee attacks are just as dangerous as those frost breaths, so make sure you're very beefy. For phase 3, your first tank swap should be right about the first Blistering Cold, and then after that, you should be aiming for a swap every 3 to 5 stacks, whatever you're able to do. It's frantic, but do your best. Speaking of Blistering Cold, you don't have to move that far outside of melee range to not get hit by it, And then once she completes the cast, make sure that you run in quick to prevent her from moving up towards you. You'll get a handle on it, it just takes some practice. In phase 3, if you have more than 5 or 6 stacks, you're going to have to use a cooldown for each frost breath that she does. It becomes super dangerous above 5, so watch it and be prepared. For some healer tips, this fight really sucks. If you get Unchained Magic, just trust your other healers and stop healing. Sit there and wait for it to fall off. That's why we have 7 healers, so that the other ones can pick up the slack. As the Frost Tombs land in phase 2, plan out your aura masteries and use AM Frost and DSAC. This will lessen the damage that these people take. You can also pre-shield and pre-hot them as they get into place so that they are full HP once the damage hits them. This helps a bunch in giving you extra time before asphyxiation kills them. In phase 3, do your best to LOS behind the block, but keep the tank in LOS. The Mystic Buffet originates from the center of her hitbox, so you can line up just so to not take stacks and stay in LOS of the tank. And in phase 3, plan your externals. The most dangerous moments in the phase are the first 2 blocks. Use DSACs here and Divine Hymns, but only if you don't have Unchained Magic. Tell your DPS to respect those stacks and be super careful. And for the DPS, this fight is all about staying alive. Respect Unchained Magic and chill to the bone. Don't die to Frost Bombs, don't let your Mystic Buffet stacks get too high, just stay alive and you'll do great. Be super careful about DPSing too hard in phase 2. You don't want those tombs to die prematurely. Wait till that 4th Frost Bomb goes out and then finish them off. And speaking of Frost Bombs, don't wait for your raid leader to call where to move. Watch the area in front of you and LOS left or right to keep that tomb in front of you. Deaths here are inexcusable. And save all your DPS cooldowns for phase 3. It's the most dangerous phase for your raid, so save those cooldowns to shorten it. Everything there will help you make that phase briefer and lead to a kill faster. And that is it for Sindragosa. If you've taken her down, you've likely got what it takes to take on Putricide, so you should be within striking distance of the Lich King himself. If you enjoyed this guide, do me a huge favor and like and subscribe. It may be ridiculous, but it really does help me a bunch, and I super appreciate it. If you're looking for an assignment sheet, I've got you up on Patreon right now so you can prep it for your raid. Just $5 a month gets you total access before the raid drops. And speaking of Patreon, a huge shout out to everyone who supported me thus far. It means a lot, guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, well, that's it for me. Thanks for sticking with me on this super long one, and I will see you in the next one.
Breath.
Good. Plain as fuck.
Yeah, I couldn't go to sleep.